Hey y'all, I'm CQ and this is Spirit Gumbo, the podcast where we stir the spiritual pot with truth, spice, and sass. Today we're diving into shadow work, those hidden parts of ourselves that trigger reactions, test our growth, and whisper for healing. We'll start with a gumbo bite, I'll share my own shadow story, and introduce you to what I call Gumbo Gremlins. Then we'll pull a tarot truth bomb and close with a spirit side eye that might just call you out and call you forward. So grab your candle, sip your tea, and let's get into it. This ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ. All right now, here's your gumbo bite for today. Something short and spicy to stir into your soul. Shadow triggers. They're those moments when you snap, shut down, or overreact and think, whoa, where did that come from? Here's the deal. That trigger isn't about the person, place, or thing in front of you. It's a signal from your shadow, those unhealed parts of you bubbling to the surface, begging for attention. Next time you feel that zap of anger or defensiveness, pause for a beat and ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Fear, shame, abandonment? When was the last time I felt this way? Childhood, past relationships? What does my body need right now? A breath, a boundary, some self-love? If you can, write those answers down. That's your shadow handing you a roadmap, one honest prompt at a time. Here's a little mini ritual to ground the energy. Light a blue candle for truth. If you don't have blue, you can always use white because white stands in for anything. Speak out loud. Shadow, I see you. I hear your message. I welcome your wisdom. Practice a little box breathing while the candle burns. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, hold again for 4. Do that for a few minutes. Let your breath anchor you as you release the emotional static. Feel it leaving your body. Slowly feel your body relaxing, and then take one last deep breath and blow out all of the emotion. Let the candle burn for at least 5 minutes while you focus on your breath and just be whatever shows up. Now, take that with you and stir wisely. What is shadow work and why do we resist it? Now that we've spotted our triggers, let's get clear on what we mean by shadow work. In Jungian psychology, your shadow self is the collection of unconscious aspects of your personality that your conscious mind doesn't recognize or outright rejects as not me. It includes things like repressed desires and drives, the impulses or wishes you've pushed away because they felt too wild, too much, or just unacceptable. Unacknowledged emotions like anger, jealousy, shame, or grief. The ones you've learned or were forced to hide, personality blind spots, habits or traits you deny in yourself, like selfishness, neediness, or the inner voice that never stops criticizing. Too many of us grew up believing our shadow selves were separate, that they were these other parts of us, but they're not. They're still you. All of it is. It's time we bring those parts into the light and claim them as our own. And while we're at it, let's quit labeling emotions as good or bad. They're just messengers. That's it. When we learn to feel them fully, sit with them, and then let them go, that's where real shadow healing begins. So that's our Jungian definition. So let's break this down. In real talk, our shadow selves, I like to look at or imagine as Peter Pan's shadow, who would even tease him and stick its tongue out at him. And it was those parts of Peter Pan that he repressed so he could stay a little boy. We do the same thing with our emotions, things that we don't want to feel, things we don't want to recognize, things we don't want to see in ourselves. We repress them and we push them to the back behind us like a shadow because we don't want to address whatever it is. When we're talking about emotions, we've been taught that when we're angry, you need to suppress that. You need to push that down. Well, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a problem. Our anger comes up and we're frustrated about work or home life or any of those things. When we can sit and take a step back and go, okay, this is making me angry. Why is this making me angry? Where does this anger come from? When we sit with it, when we feel it, when we allow ourselves to feel, then we're better able to let it go. Does that mean that we're never going to be angry? No, it just means that we recognize, hey, at this juncture, I'm mad. I'll tell you a little story, and we're not even to story time with CQ, but I'm going to tell you a little story. I get so frustrated with social media. Let me tell you what, the social media swing drives me absolutely mad. I can read something on social media, it sets my it sets my triggers off. And then I'm frustrated like for the rest of the day. Or at least that's how I used to be. Nowadays, when something triggers me on social media, I either scroll past it because I'm like, you know what? If I read this, I know that it's going to put me in a bad mood. I know it's going to trigger something in me and I really just don't want to feel it. Or I read it or look at it. And then if it does make me mad, then I take a step back and I go, okay, what is in me that's being triggered right now? Why am I angry about this? And a lot of times when it comes to social media, a lot of times it's the back and forth swing. This podcast is not about politics. This podcast isn't even about world events right now. This podcast really is about healing. But social media is in our life. When I can take a step back and look at what's being triggered, then I can state, oh, X, Y, and Z made me mad. And then I sit with it. Why did it make me mad? What did it trigger in me? I can let it go. When we approach our emotions from a place of being able to recognize that made me mad, that made me sad, that triggered my grief, that triggered my jealousy. When we can sit back and look at our emotions from that place, we integrate them. And when we integrate them, they trigger us less. And now we'll go into story time with CQ. So I want to start this by saying, our healing journeys truly never end. We are always going to be healing something. Sometimes it's really deep, sometimes it's not so deep, but we're always healing. And the beauty of that is because we're always healing, we're always learning, we're always growing. When we're not growing, we stop living, is the best way that I can say that. Most people think healing is linear, but it's not. It's actually a spiral. So if you think of a conch shell, we keep circling back to the same lessons, but each time we're a little higher, a little clearer, and more healed. So like a conch shell on the top. If you've watched Shrek, our healing journeys are like an onion, layer after layer after layer, but it's still a circle, and we're still doing that circle, so we're always going to come back to the same lessons. I've struggled with not feeling like enough probably my whole life. I want to be clear that this isn't about other people in my life. This is just how I have internally felt for most of my life. I never felt good enough. That belief shaped me into a people pleaser. I had a hard time saying no, and when I did say no, I'd either explain it, soften it, apologize for it. Here's the thing though. No is a full sentence. N-O, full sentence, full stop. I personally think we need to start figuring out as a society when we started apologizing for honoring our own needs, because I do believe that this is a learned trait and it's something that is now in our DNA, if that makes sense. So one of the things that I always tell my students when I'm teaching is that when you start working with spirit on a regular basis, whatever you need to heal is going to come up and Spirit is going to shine a light on it. When we're working with Spirit, typically we're helping other people. And if other people are being triggered, it's possible that trigger is going to trigger you. So Spirit has this way of bringing up our own trauma for us to address it so we're not bleeding on somebody else. So when I started doing tarot readings way back when, Spirit definitely shined a light on my people pleasing and me learning how to set boundaries and saying no. I had clients who would message me at like 5 p.m. wanting a 6 o'clock reading when I wasn't even there. I had people asking for weekend appointments when I had plans with my family, and I would literally freeze. I would stare at my phone and try to come up with the quote unquote best possible response that wasn't going to make them mad or make them feel some kind of way. I don't know how else to say it, because that was what was in my mind. I'm not good enough and I have to say yes. That's how I felt. I was afraid to say no. And yet every time I said yes when I meant no, I felt like I was abandoning myself. I've learned over time just how often I shrunk myself for others' comfort. And yet now I'm learning that I am enough, that I don't need to justify anything, that I'm okay just being me. And so if you contact me now and you want an appointment at 6, but I got plans, I'm going to say no. Most of the time without it hurting the inside of me. However, the lesson does come back around. When those lessons come up, I remind myself that this is just part of the spiral. And yet still, sometimes I do catch myself every now and then wanting to soften a no or explain my boundaries. But this is the work. So right now, as I record this, I am still in it. Even while I'm recording, my phone could go off and I'm going to want to respond or say yes or not. It just depends. But I'm learning and I'm growing. Spirit's been dragging me recently through some deep lessons. And I don't want to say that lightly. It's been triggering, uncomfortable, raw, but it's also been clarifying. I'm seeing my patterns more clearly than ever. And yeah, the gremlins have been loud. And when I say gumbo gremlins, those little guys are the thoughts, the feelings, the voices that can just go off in our head that tell us we're not good enough, that tell us we deserve whatever it is that we're going through in the moment, or we deserve to be mad, or we deserve, right? Those gumbo gremlins. And I've learned over time to just, they come up and I go, you know what? I really don't want to listen to what you have to say today. I acknowledge that you're there and I don't need you stirring the pot today. So maybe this story, that shadow work doesn't have a clean before and after. It's a spiral. And sometimes you circle back to a deeper layer. And that's where I am. And if you're there too, we can walk this part together. Why we resist shadow work. Let's talk about why so many of us resist shadow work, because let's be honest, it ain't easy. And I think that that's the number one aspect of why we resist. It's not easy. It's not easy for us to step out of ourselves and look at messy or bad emotions or aspects of ourselves that we may be ashamed of or feel guilty about. It is hard work. There is no doubt that shadow work is some of the hardest things that we do as spirits trapped in a meat suit. We're afraid of what we'll find. Looking into our own mess? Yeah, okay. I'd rather look into somebody else's, right? That's how we look at things. Think about how often we're able to give friends, coworkers advice when actually we really need to be looking at our own messy lives and addressing our own stuff, except that we find it easier to help others, right? We're carrying cultural shame. We're taught to always look put together. Admitting we've got darkness, that feels taboo. Heck, even I, as a witch of the woods, when I was getting to a place where I was accepting myself for who I wasn't ashamed of calling myself a witch. But I know culturally speaking, that's taboo. I mean, I don't think anybody would burn me at the stake today, but you never know. So yeah, some of these things society can look down on us for, and that's ingrained in us. And we don't always understand the why. We think shadow equals bad when really it's a gold mine of healing. When we can look at the quote unquote bad parts of ourselves, we are sometimes, I think, amazed at what we find. When we can be truthful with ourselves, then we're more able to be truthful in all of our relationships. Our number one relationship should be with self. Everything else is secondary. So if I'm not accepting of myself, or if I don't fully integrate all parts of myself, how can I show up in other relationships as who I truly am? If you're like me and you feel ready to dip your toe into the shadow pool, here are some practical steps to begin. And these are really simple journal prompts just to get you started. There's no pressure, just honesty. When was the last time I felt insert emotion? Where was I? And who was I with? What judgment do I carry about myself that I rarely say out loud? How would I speak to a friend going through this? And can I say that to myself? After each journaling session, revisit your blue candle ritual and let that flame hold your truth. And here's a quick tip for tough conversations. Do a shadow check-in. Pause, breathe, name what you're feeling. That way you can show up with honesty and truth. And speaking of truth, let's go ahead and move into a tarot truth bomb, because I'm sure Spirit has something to say. It's time for a tarot truth bomb, where Spirit speaks through the cards and I don't sugarcoat the message. Today's pull is all about the shadow and what's surfacing to be healed. So as I shuffle, I want you to take a deep breath and ask yourself, what truth is trying to rise through the shadows? I'm going to pause while I shuffle, and then I'll come back with the card. All right, so today's card is the Star card. So in traditional tarot, the Star card is all about hope. It usually represents the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's so funny because we're talking about our shadow sides, and the card that comes up is the one of hope. And I think that what this means, or not think, but what's coming to me, is that when we're able to heal, when we're able to address our shadow sides, we're taking out the fear. We're taking out the things that are holding us back. And what are they being replaced with? Compassion, love, empathy, hope. It replaces, I don't want to, I hate saying negative and positive, but it does. It takes away a lot of the negative and then replaces it with hope. I love the Star card. It's one of my favorite cards in the deck. And the reason why I love this card so much is because there was a time in my life where I really had no hope. I was in a place where I was just in a place where I couldn't see a future. And this card came up. And isn't that funny? Because the one thing that I didn't see in my future was healing. And so I've done a lot of healing work since that Star card came up for me. And this is just a reminder for me that hope equals healing. Hope means being able to move into the future without carrying all that extra baggage, because that's also what shadow work is. It's getting rid of it. I'm having such a hard time talking today. It's getting rid of the baggage, the things that weigh us down. So that way, moving into the future, we don't have to stress about those things. And we don't have those things weighing us down. So yeah, the star card. Hopefully it brings you as much hope as it brought to me. Spirit said what it said. Spirit didn't stutter. Take it in, sit with it, and do what you will with it. All right. So that was our Tarot Truth Bomb for today. So now it's time for a Spirit Side Eye. Because some of y'all out here playing with energy like Spirit won't slap you in the back of the head. You peer over your shoulder at every trigger as if it makes you bad. But that's not the real trap. Shaming your shadow only keeps it in the dark. What if, instead of side-eyeing yourself, you gave yourself a little side hug? Acknowledge that anger, that jealousy, that shame, not as failure, but as fuel for transformation. Here's today's Spirit Side-Eye Challenge. The next time you catch yourself hating on your feelings, stop and say, I see you, shadow. Thanks for the reminder. That's how we feel and heal. That was your Spirit Side-Eye. Now go sage your space and mind your magical business. Let me say this with all my heart. If you've been shaming your feelings, avoiding your triggers, or hiding your healing, this is your spiritual nudge to stop running. You're not too much. You're not broken. You're human, and your shadow is sacred. We don't grow by pretending the pain doesn't exist. We grow by looking it in the eye, saying I see you, and choosing to show up anyway. So here's a few things you can do today to honor your shadow and work with your triggers. Pause before you react. Let awareness lead, not autopilot. Knee-jerk reactions only cause more issues. Even if somebody wants something from you, take a moment to pause and say, hey, I'll get back with you. I need a moment to think this over. When we take the time to respond instead of react, we're not allowing our shadow to get the best of us. Journal honestly and let your pen say what your mouth won't. Even if you're saying the same thing over and over again just to get it out. That journal can be burned if I can't get it out. That journal can be burned if necessary, but be honest. The only way to face how you're feeling is to be honest and truthful with yourself. Hold your body with love. Stretch, breathe, rest, whatever it needs. Hug yourself. Give yourself a hug. Love yourself the way that you want to be loved. There have been plenty of times, especially recently for myself, where pain triggers in my body from past traumas. And I sit there and I put my hand over that painful spot and I say, I love you. I'm sending you compassion. And it's okay. We're safe. One of the best things that you can do for your body is remind it that it's safe. Use the blue candle ritual. Anchor your intentions to feel and heal. Speak kindly to your shadow. Remember, it's a wounded part of you, not the enemy. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about loving yourself back into wholeness. And that, my friends, is some really powerful magic. That's it for today's brew. If something stirred your soul, pass it on, and don't forget to follow, rate, and share your thoughts on any of our socials. Next week, in episode 3, Simmer and Release the Magic of Letting Go, we're diving into the sacred power of release, what it really means to let go, and how spirit stirs change when we stop clinging to the past. Until next time, this ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ.